Hi everyone, this is Rafiq Qureshi here, currently working as the head of SEO and growth for Sira Group, which is based in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. I'm very excited for this session, but before I put the context to this one, I'll just give you guys a brief intro about myself. So I have been working in SEO from like last 9 to 10 years now. And before coming here to UAE, Dubai, I was working back in Karachi, Pakistan for Daraz.pk, Daraz Group actually, as the head of SEO. And I left Daraz in 2017. And since then till now, I'm working here as the head of SEO and Group. So this is about me. Now I'll just begin with the session, which is optimizing for search engines. And I will try to keep it as much as simplify as I can. Reason why a lot of you are like going to, hearing this stuff for the first time. And for some of you, it is something which is most probably which is familiar, but I'll just try to keep it as simple as I can so that all of you can understand it and start implementing it for your website. Perfect. Also, if someone will have an issue in in the audio, or if someone is not able to hear me, so just please put that in the chat so that I know that there is an issue, so I can repeat myself if needed. Cool. So I'll just begin now. Optimizing for search engines. What is it and why is it important? I mean, why do you have to optimize your website for the search engine in first go? So what is SEO? So basically, SEO stands for search engine optimization. It is the practice of increasing your website traffic as well as exposure to your brand through organic search results. And why it's important? So traffic can be generated through a lot of there are a lot of ways to generate traffic to your website. Like there is paid advertising, there can be social media that can generate traffic for your website. There can be influencers who can generate traffic to your website. And there are a lot of community forums where you can participate and generate traffic to your websites. But then there is another way of driving traffic to your website, and that way is called SEO. It is the most efficient way of generating traffic to your website. Reason why the people who come through search engines are more interested in knowing more about your product. One of the reasons for that is that they are searching for it on the search engine. It's them who's actually looking for that specific question. A lot of us type a lot of things on the search engine because we have the intent to look for it, and we have the curiosity to get into that, and that's one of the reasons why we get into search engines. And people who are coming from search engines, they're like more interested. If you're selling something online on an e-commerce store and someone searches for that through a search engine, well, there are more chances of him to convert as compared to someone who's just browsing social media, browsing his Facebook, and sees your ad and then he just clicks it. Maybe he's not willing to buy it for now, but someone looking for your product on search engine is more likely to buy it because he was the one who had the intent to look into that on search engines. According to Moz.com, Moz.com is a website. It's a SEO website where you can get all things related to SEO. According to them, SEO has a 20x more traffic opportunity as compared to other paid mediums on both devices, mobile and desktop. So we know okay, what is SEO? We have the understanding of, okay, SEO is search engine optimization, where you are optimizing your website so you can generate traffic from search engines like Google. Whereas why SEO is important, because it has the intention of a user coming from search engine is a lot higher than intent of a user coming from other different medium of your website to get the traffic. So if you have to do it by yourself, how will you do it? I mean, there are 4 easy steps that I have tried to put this into. Analyze your website data, conduct the keyword research, on-site SEO, and off-site SEO. So this is just the top level, and I'll just start getting into each one of them one by one. So what is analyze your website data? What do I mean by analyze your website data? So there is an easy way of analyzing your website data, which you can do from Google Analytics. So basically Google Analytics and Google Search Console, they are 2 tools that are provided by Google that you can implement on your website, where you can actually see how much traffic you're generating to your website, from where that traffic is coming to your website, and from which keywords that traffic is actually coming to your website. With these data points, you can actually understand, like, how people are behaving or how people are interacting with your website, and based on that you can actually plan your SEO strategy. So I just see a question here. Maybe I can answer to it later once we are done with this. Good. So yeah, Google Analytics and Google Search Console, these 2 tools can actually help you getting that data, understanding that data, where you can actually see, like, which page of your website is generating how many number of sessions, how many number of users are coming to that page, what is the bounce rate of that page, and what is the e-commerce conversion rate of that page if it's an e-commerce website, or what is the session to interaction of that page if it's a blog, let's say, or average duration time on your page. Yep. Another, the most important, like, if you know, like, how to conduct, like, how to first understand the data, maybe then you can see, like, oh, there is a topic that people are, like, searching on Google, which is redirecting them to my website. With this topic, maybe you can now start, connecting dots, and based on that topic, you can conduct your keyword research. Now, what is keyword research? It is the process of finding the right type of, the right type of keywords that people would search for when they're, looking for you on the search engine. You can actually get these keywords from different tools. I'll discuss those tools in my next slide. So Keyword Planner, it's a tool that helps you getting the data from Google. It's a tool that is used by a lot of paid marketers as well as, and SEOs as well, where you can actually enter a keyword and it can give you the data against that keyword. Like for instance, let's say I search for cheap flights on Keyword Planner, and that tool will tell me that there are 50,000 people who are actually searching for that keyword, or there are 200,000 people that are actually searching for that keyword. And based on that, you can actually prioritize that keyword, that how do you want to rank for that keyword. And then there is Google Search Console, which is actually your own data. So when you implement Search Console on your website, it starts tracking how people are actually coming to your website. And it does that by gathering all of that information so that you can analyze it later and you can, plan according to that data. So Google Search Console will tell you your keywords, like what keywords are bringing traffic to your website. And then there are tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs, which can also tell you your competitors' data by, putting their website on their tool, and it tells you like what keywords your competitors are actually ranking for. And based on that data, you can also plan, like, okay, how do I need to plan my keyword strategy? Because if the website that is selling the same product as I am selling, what if I also add those keywords to my website, because my competitor is also ranking for them keyword and is generating a lot of quality traffic from that keyword. And then there is Ubersuggest, which is also a free tool that also gives you, like, you enter a keyword, it will come back to you with other recommended keywords that you can actually start targeting for your website with their search volumes and how competitive they are. And there is another thing in Google related searches. So you might have noticed this, that when you are searching for something on Google, you will also see related searches, like people who have searched for this query have also searched for this query. And you can also gather data with for those keywords, so that you can also target those keywords, those related keywords. I'll just give you some examples. Yeah, so I did this on Ubersuggest, where I entered online shopping and it gave me like 561 keywords, ideas, suggestions. And then there were related keywords like 133, then there were 111 questions, 55 propositions, 46 comparisons. So a tool like Ubersuggest can actually help you. Like if you are a very non-technical person, or let's say if you are a content writer who wants to optimize his content, but wants to make sure that his content is SEO friendly, all those people can actually use a tool like Ubersuggest or keywordtool.io. Yep. Just give me a minute. And yes, then there is Google suggestions. Use Google to get relevant keywords to your topical keywords. So for instance, let's say my topical keyword is Jeddah to Dubai flights. So I search for Jeddah to Dubai flights, and then what I see in related searches related to cheap flights from Jeddah to Dubai is Jeddah to Dubai Saudi Airlines, Jeddah to Dubai distance, Riyadh to Dubai, Jeddah to Dubai Flynas, Jeddah to Dubai, Fly Dubai, Jeddah to Dubai kilometer, Jeddah to Dubai by route. And these are those queries that people have actually searched for when they were also looking for, Jeddah to Dubai flights or cheap flights from Jeddah to Dubai. So with this, you can actually also plan your content, because these are all related keywords to each other, and Google will actually, like, if you will incorporate these keywords into your content or into your SEO strategy, and you just optimize your website for one keyword, you will be also ranking it then for all these keywords if you have also incorporated these keywords into your content or into your landing page without even making an effort. Then we have on-site optimization. But before I jump into on-site optimization, I just want to see like if we have any keyword related questions. Okay. So I have this one question which I can see. Can we analyze data region or country wise? And do we have any particular tool which has all the features for these steps, analyzing data, keyword research, on-page optimization, and off-page optimization? I mean, if you want to look into your data by region, and Google Search Console can be very helpful, because in Google Search Console, you can also see like from which countries people are searching for what keywords. Like you can set United States as a country, and then you will be seeing like, what were the keywords that people have searched from United States. Maybe that can help you. Plus, if you just want to, let's say in my case, I have to manage 5 different countries. I have to manage Kuwait, I have to manage Saudi Arabia, I have to manage UAE, Egypt, Bahrain, for example. So what I would do is, with Google Keyword Planner or even with a tool like Ubersuggest, there is an option that gives you country-wise option. where you can select a country, and based on that country, it will show you the search volume of that specific keyword. Because let's say cheap flight, the keyword volume for cheap flights in Saudi Arabia will be different as compared to the search volume of cheap flights in Pakistan. So by every country, you can actually look into that data. And then there is another question, difference between Search Console and Analytics. So both are tools provided by Google, but Search Console is like more into, it gives you more technical information about your SEO. It can give you information that is related to your server errors. It can give you information that is related to your page performance. It can give you it can give you information that is related to your keywords in terms of how your keywords are performing and how your keywords are getting impressions on the Google search result page, like what is their average click-through rate, what is their average position. With all this data, you can actually start prioritizing, like, okay, there is a keyword that has an impression of 1 million, but the CTR of that keyword is, let's say, 0.02, whereas the average position of that keyword is 8. So what you can do with this data from Search Console is you can start prioritizing that keyword. So let's say if I have a CTR of 0.02, but the impression count for that specific keyword is 1 million, then I need to start prioritizing for that keyword because I'm already ranking at number 8. So I have this opportunity where I can actually, where I can actually push that keyword. I can look into the content of that keyword. I can look into the onset of that keyword that we will discuss after we are done with keyword optimization. So maybe that will give you more answer to what you're asking. And then there is Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is not only specific to how your organic traffic is performing, but Google Analytics is relevant in terms of it gives you an overall picture of how your website is performing, not only on search engines, but how are you getting the traffic from direct as a source? How are you getting the traffic from social media? Within social media, are you getting more traffic from Facebook or are you getting more traffic from Twitter? So Google Analytics will tell you all that, like it will give you all that information. And then it can also tell you, like, how many of your users are coming from mobile devices, how many of them are coming from desktop. This is something that Search Console can also tell you. But there are, like, Google Analytics will give you more data in terms of how people are behaving on your website. And if I have to break down Google Analytics, I'll break it down in four different ways. Number one is audience, like who's coming to your website. Number two is acquisition, where are they coming, like how are they coming to your website. Number three is behavior, when they come to your website, what are they doing, what pages are they visiting. And number four is conversions, like where are they converting, what are the pages where they are actually converting. So this is how I would break down Google Analytics. And then there is a lot of things that you can do in Google Analytics, like you can go into even that data, like even if people are coming from mobile devices, what devices are they using. If they're using XYZ devices, and okay, so what was the dimension of those devices. I mean, these are the details that you can actually get only from Google Analytics. And then there is another question that I will answer later when we will do off page. Okay, so Saad Ahmed is asking, as a beginner, should I purchase Ahrefs for better keyword research? Okay, so as a beginner, I guess you don't have to. Trust me, like even after doing SEO for a longer period of time, there are few tools that I have ever purchased in my life, because you can still do a lot of stuff from the trial periods that they give you. And like if I have to look into someone's domain authority, page authority, I will look into Ahrefs. I'll just put the website link and I'll get that score anyways. I'll at least get an idea, a holistic picture of what people are actually searching for. Even 5 keywords can actually give you a good idea of, okay, what direction do I need to pick. So you don't have to actually invest on your keyword tool until you think that you can, like, it's only 1% of your revenue cost. If you think that, and if that makes sense to you, then you can definitely purchase it. But as long as it's giving you the return on investment. How to SEO in my Instagram account and my YouTube channel. So for Instagram, it's like what captions do you have on the picture plus how many hashtags you will use. That depends. Whereas for YouTube, it's very important to make sure that you have the right description added in the YouTube video. Your YouTube title matters a lot. Plus, how many people have actually liked your video in YouTube, because that is also one of the ranking factors for YouTube, or how do you want to rank in YouTube. Saad Sheikh has another question about the keyword. So there is a tool called Sensor Tower. It's a purchase version that I use, but I don't know if they also have any free tool that can actually tell you what are the best keywords for your app. But you can still do one thing. You can go to any free keyword research tools, and you can actually look into the data that people are searching from their mobile devices. Like, what keywords do people search for from their mobile devices? Maybe that can give you a relevance. So Saad Sheikh asked me, how can you check what is the best keyword for our app/web? So I've already answered this. Okay. Regarding keyword research, I had used few tools and each tool showed me different results. Can you suggest us a tool which has accuracy for keyword research? So Adil Ahmed Evan is asking me this question. Adil, honestly, I've been also trying to find the answer of this question. Like, what is the source of truth that I should be actually considering as a source of truth? Because there are discrepancies, but what I do for myself is I just follow the trend, because at least that trend can actually give you data. Like I'll tell you one good example of some of the keywords that I rank for the websites that I have worked for. They generate a lot of traffic, but if you look into the search volumes on a tool like Keyword Planner as well, you will see like the volume is in hundreds, but what I'm actually generating from that keyword or from the landing page is in thousands. But how do I prioritize that for myself, or how I was able to prioritize it as a top keyword for myself based on what users are searching internally on my website? I mean, that is something that you can actually do. You can actually look into your internal search data, and you can find like what are the things that people are actually searching within my website, and how do I optimize them for my website. And that is something which a lot of e-commerce websites do. They keep looking into their internal search data just to figure out what is it that people are actually looking for. And based on that, they start adding their inventory. So Shumaila Khan is asking another question. I'm always confused about keywords. How do we identify keywords and make sure we are on the right track? So Shumaila, I mean, again, you just have to prioritize them based on what is important for your user. And when I am confused, just like you, what I do for myself is I just put myself into the customer's shoe. That's it. If I was a user for this specific product, what I was looking for, I mean, what are the keywords that I would search for if I have to actually, do this for myself. If I have to book a flight for Karachi from Dubai, for instance, so what are the keywords that I would search for? I will search for flights to Dubai. I will search for flights to Karachi from Dubai. I will search for cheap flights to Karachi. I will search for flights to Karachi. I will search for book flights to Karachi. I will search for flights to Karachi, PIA. I will search for flights to Karachi, AirBlue. So see, I mean, these are the keywords that I would search as a user if I have to book a flight to Karachi. I mean, think as a user, put yourself into the user's place, and then you will start generating more sensible ideas, more reasonable ideas for your users. All right. Another question, at what stage does an SEO consultant get involved, pre-development of website or during development? What is the most efficient way to have a third-party consultant deal with the SEO? So Raza Nakvi is asking me this question. So at what stage does an SEO consultant get involved? If someone has to ask me, let's say for consultancy, how I would do that as a consultant, I will actually, like, if the website is under development, I will ask the company to have a shorter period of contract with the consultant, where they can just do a contract of, let's say, 1 month, 2 month, or 3 month, depending how big is the website, and then they can plan, like, what are the things that the SEO consultant needs to do when the website is under development. So he can list down those things, that I will have to do this, I will have to do this, I will have to do this, I will have to do this. So when the website is under development, you can just ask him to give you a proposal for the technical enhancements only. So when you're developing the website, he makes sure that everything from a technical perspective is already there on your website. Because if that's already there, I mean, you're all sorted. And there is this question, why do people say getting external links is the most important part of SEO? I will jump onto that part once we are done with this keyword optimization part, and I'll answer you this question, Sabika, don't worry. All right, so I hope that we are clear with how to do keyword research, what is the right way of doing keyword research, and how to prioritize your keyword research. So now you have, let's say now you have the keywords, you have the data with you. Now, how do you optimize? How do you put that data onto your website? Because if you have the data now, the question is, how do you use that on your website, and what are the areas where you need to use it? This is where on-site optimization comes. And I have tried to divide my on-site strategy into 3 different areas. One is meta tag, number 2 is keyword usage, number 3 is accessibility. So how do you optimize your meta tags? How do you utilize your keywords? And then there are technical accessibility issues that you need to make sure are there and are there in a good shape. So meta tags for search, this is just a preview of a snippet, but what are they actually? So meta tags on search engines are like these 6 basic meta tags, where you have title tag as your number 1 meta tag, your meta description tag, your heading tag, your robots tag, your canonical tag, and your alt text. So what is basically, I'll just give you a summary of each of these items. So what is basically title tag? So title tag is a tag that you use for your landing page, where if you go to Google, you will see that what people have actually searched for. I'll just also, once I'm done with this, I'll also give you an example. So title tag is what you have on the title of the page, then the description, which is more of a backend thing. But then when someone searches for a keyword, that description is like highlighted on the search result page. But when you go to the page, you will not find that description. And then the heading tag, which is your H1, your H2, your H3. Then there is the robots tag, where if you want to index follow the page, you can do that. If you don't want to do that, you can just block it. There is canonical tags, and then there is alt text. I'll try to give you guys an example of title tag. Can you guys see my screen with Google open on it? Perfect. So guys, I've searched for Fly Dubai. So this is the meta title. Fly Dubai flights, book cheap flights online with Fly Dubai. And then these are the site links. These are the top stories. This is their Facebook page. This is their Wikipedia. This is Tajawal, a website that I work for. So what is it that I have done to get this one ranked? Fly Dubai, book Fly Dubai flight tickets online with Tajawal. And in the description, you will see Fly Dubai is bold, because Google is able to see that how much I am focusing on this keyword, that I have this keyword 2 times in my meta title, I have this keyword in my meta description text, and then I also have this keyword in my URL. So it tells Google, and it tells Google that, you know, how important is this keyword for me. And based on all these components, it will be easy for Google to actually start ranking me for that specific keyword. Then we have heading text. I mean, I'll just go like, this is the heading text from me, H1. And then there is robots tag, canonical tags, alt tags. Canonical is something that actually tells Google that this page where you are landing right now is the actual version of the page. Because sometimes what happens is, you guys must have seen this, that when you go to any e-commerce website, there are filters where you can actually, you know, select, like you can actually go to a, let's say, page that says t-shirts as a category. Under t-shirts, you can select colors, where there can be a red color, blue color, green color, or black color. With that color, you can pass a parameter that will actually generate another URL for Google if canonical tag is not implemented. eBay.com, it's like 5-6 years back. eBay.com, they didn't implement the canonical tags, but they had a lot of filters pages which were actually accidentally indexed, not accidentally, but because they forgot to add the canonical tag. Google indexed all of those filtered pages, and then later Google penalized them for creating a lot of duplicate pages for the same term. Because when Google was reading those pages, all those pages were about t-shirts, but then there was a filter that was passing to that page. So the URL was same, but then again, there was red t-shirt, blue t-shirt, green t-shirt that was sharing all the content coming from the t-shirts page. And that all happened because they forget to implement the canonical tags. So that's why it is very important to make sure that you have the canonical tags implemented. And then there is alt text, which is also known as alternative text. It is for the images. So the images that you use on your website, if you have a blog on WordPress, you will always see that the WordPress image upload section will always ask you for the image title, the image description, and the alt text of that image. All that information is very necessary for you to fill. Reason why, if you will fill that, and let's say someone will search for an image, it will be easy for them to find their image. Let's say I'll just two images, search for this. So this result. So this is all ranked over here. Like you can see digital marketing, business, social media, logo, website, and then there is a lot of things. Link building, background, infographic. So all of this is happening because Google is able to read this data. And how is Google able to read this data? Because they might have implemented all this background information into the alt text. Meta tags, again, it's a checklist, can help both search engines and searchers. They can help you improve the user experience and the display of your business information that we have seen already as an example of meta title and meta description. You just need to check whether all of your pages and your content have the right title tags and meta descriptions with the keywords that you have already gathered with your keyword research. Start paying more attention to your headings and how to structure your content. Don't forget again to mark your images with alt tags, use robot meta tags, search for duplicate pages, canonical text to avoid cannibalizing your own content. And yeah. I just want to see if you have any questions. No questions. Guys, just one thing, whenever there is a question, please add it so that I can, you know, I can instantly answer it to you. So that way we can keep the energy into this amazing conversation that we are having about SEO. Cool. So there is then another thing that I would like to discuss, which is like, I mean, it's one of the things that we all should capitalize if we have our websites, if we are doing SEO to our websites, schema markups or rich data. Okay, so there is one good question by Sayyid Talha Izhar. How are the site links ranked? So they are ranked based on how you have structured your navigation on your website. That's number one. Number two is what are the popular pages or the pages where people go to when they land on your website. So Google ranks the site link based on how people are actually interacting with that information. If Google will see that there are, let's say, 10 links in your navigation, but out of those 10 links, there are these 4 links that people are usually going to or are finding useful for them. So Google will start prioritizing them as your site links, because Google search engine is not someone who will just throw the information. Google is a lot more about user experience. I was long time ago, I was in a session in the Google office, and they told us, like, for the color that you have seen in the meta title, that color, they actually tested like 200 variations of that color just to see how people will behave and how people will click, which one is more user friendly to the eyes of the user. I mean, Google gets into that detail of of user experience. How can we train search engine? There is no way of training the search engine, but yeah, you can actually follow the best practices, and that's it. You don't have to train the search engine. It's very smart now. Cool. So the another topic is the schema markup. So schema org is the result of the collaboration between Google, Bing, Yandex, and Yahoo to help you provide the information to their search engines to understand the purpose of the content. I have some examples that will actually help you understanding what is basically schema markups. Okay, there is a question that I'll answer, but I just want to finish this one. So schema markups. So when you search for all this data, you will also see, like, like you guys must have seen this data when you're searching on Google for some of the queries, like AirBlue, for instance. Book AirBlue airline flight tickets online with Tajawal. Then there is a rating for AirBlue that is coming from my website, from our website, where we have got the got the rating for the website, that it has a rating of 3 based on 285 reviews. So this is the review schema markup, and then there is the question answer schema markup, FAQ schema markup. Sorry. Does AirBlue have options for online seat selection? What is the airline code for AirBlue? What is the total number of routes serviced by AirBlue? So we have also tried to provide that information within the search result page, so that whoever lands on the search result can actually get this information when they are on the search result, because that will actually improve the user experience of the user, because he's getting the information on the first site. So that's amazing, and that is what Google actually appreciates, that you are actually providing the information to the user even before he's landing to your website. So half of the information is already with him before he has clicked on your link. And since you are the one who's providing him that information, that additional information versus your competitors, chances are higher for you that the user would actually click on your search result versus someone else's search result. Then there is another example of the event schema markup that I took from Eventbrite, Pakistan events and things to do. Eventbrite, Thursday, 30 April, Turk and Tone for Fairburn, Sharifabad Brand Office, Web Talk Invite Day. So these events are also listed there on the search result page. And then this is something for the recipe websites. The best pizza dough recipe, sugar spun run. Rating of the website, feature image of the recipe. Rating is coming based on the number of votes, how much time it would take you to build this recipe, 1 hour, how much calories? 101 calories. So I mean, this is amazing. It is just, you should know based on your content, what schema markup do you need to implement? And if someone is running a blog for that, I mean, then it is extremely easy, because then you can actually, you know, download a WordPress plugin for that, and you can actually implement it. And you can select the schema markup type that you want to implement on your landing page, and it's done. It is that simple. There is something. Okay. So Mubin Yaqub is asking, Google is crawling the website but not indexing all the pages. Mubin, that is a very common thing that I have seen with a lot of websites. There is one big reason when that happens. You need to look into how your internal linking has been implemented. Because most of the times there are 60% of your internal links within your website, they are just getting the link for one time from your website, whereas your focus is always on, like, you know, there are top 10 keywords on my website that I would like to rank for them, so I will just put them in my footer, I will put them in my related links, I will put them in my navigation structure, and your mind will be only restricted to those limited keywords. Whereas the best way of doing this is to make sure that every single landing page on your website, every single directory on your website is linked with each other. Do more of a, you know, user research of this on, if someone lands to your website, why would they land, number one, and if they land to your website, what are the useful things that they are actually looking for? Because when you will start thinking in that way, like, okay, someone has landed on my webpage, now what is it? What are the components that he is going to be interested in? Think of them, note them down, and then see, are those components there on your website? And within those components, are the links there on those components, or are you missing something, or are you just again repeating the same links? I mean, you can talk to your developer and you can think of a way of, you know, automating this, or maybe you can create a data source on Google Sheet and link it to your database and generate internal linking components based on that. And this way you can actually produce a lot of internal links within your website that will tell Google that how important all of these links are. Because I have actually seen this from my experience that 60% of your links are only getting just one internal link, and then they are deprioritized by Google, because then Google would think that, okay, 20 of those pages from his website are actually getting 20,000 internal links, but 40,000 of his pages are just getting one internal link, so maybe they're less important. So look into that part as well, because if that is sorted, I mean, then it's all good. In my experience with TradeKey.com, and I was at TradeKey.com, used to generate around 500,000 sessions per day. And the only thing that I did in my 3-year term with TradeKey.com was mainly focusing on the internal linking components. And I've seen for a website, for a big website like TradeKey, I mean, you cannot just rely on, you know, link building or robots file or sitemap, but you also have to look into the details of how your content is internally linked with each other. I hope that answers your question. And then, yeah, so I was talking about the schema markup and why it is important. If you provide half of the information before the user is landed on your page, chances are that he would actually click on the link and he'll get to your page. And why do you need to capitalize on this one? Reason why: only 12.3% of search results right now, as per Ahrefs data, only 12.3% of search results have the feature snippet. What do I mean by feature snippet? These snippets that you can see here, like, you know, the events, the rating for the recipe, and, you know, all these question answers snippets, these are called feature snippets. So only 12.3%, if let's say out of every website on Google search result, if 87.7% are not utilizing them, but 12.3% of them are actually utilizing them, so you can understand their click-through rate would be a lot higher as compared to those who are not utilizing these snippets. And with my experience, I'll tell you one thing, that when we did implemented this for our websites, like in my previous job, plus even in my current job, when we implemented these snippets, we see a uplift in our organic traffic. Reason why? Our rankings could have been the same as they were before, as they were 3 months back, but then what it impacted was the click-through rate of our search results, because when you have all these snippets, rating stars, more information to the topic, I mean, chances are that people would click on your link, and that generates more traffic. So you need to think smartly that how do you want to actually grab that traffic from the search engines. Is it okay to have a single landed web page, or we should need to include multiple pages on our website for SEO? I mean, see, if the page is some sort of even a funnel sort of a thing for someone to sign up on your website, or is it is more of a lead gen page, I mean, even then it's important for you to create content to that particular topic. And to do that, you need to have multiple landing pages on your website, because then Google will think that this is just another domain that is trying to, you know, scrape the information from the internet, and then it will go offline. Because then in that case, if you have just single landed web page on your website, you're not providing any information. And even if you're planning to have a single landed web page, then it has to be like really comprehensive. Like then you need to write 3,000-4,000 words for that particular topic that you want to, you know, that you want to build a landing page for. Then it would make sense. But if it's for the purpose of, you know, generating leads, I mean, then I would suggest you to start with a blog on that topic, and then you can create multiple lead funnels that are related to that topic, and then you can actually, you know, get that data that you are looking for. Keyword usage again. So we all know that the keywords that we have chosen, are just another question. I guess there was a question related to keyword research. Find it. Okay, Maria Harim to all panelists, Moz or Neil Patel, where to start? And you can actually start with moz.com, because it has a very comprehensive guide, you know, like by chapters, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So it's going to be more helpful. Okay, so there is this question. Yes, I was looking for that one. I have been working on on-page optimization, and from somewhere I figured it out that the keyword you are adding in meta tags for particular web page, it has to be highlighted in your content of that page. Okay, so I'll just take you through this keyword usage, and then I'll answer it to you, so that you will have a more clear idea of your, like, what is it that you need to do. So again, be hyper relevant to a topic. If your website is about cooking recipes, keep it to cooking recipes. If your website is about cars, keep it to cars. Don't throw content that is related to, let's say, mobiles and laptops. But if it's related to cars, keep it to car. Maybe you can do one more thing, like you can be relevant in a way. Let's say there is a car game that you would like to talk about. So then again, your topic is car, but then there is the car game that you are talking about. So then it does make sense. But let's say if your website is about, you know, cars.com, but then you just put everything on your website, then it won't make any sense. So whatever is the website, be relevant. If you choose a topic, be relevant to that topic, because then this is how Google will start recognizing you as a thought leader for that topic. So hyper relevant to the topic, include keyword in the title tag. We have seen that already as an example of what we did with Fly Dubai landing page. Include keyword in the URL structure. In the image alt text, specify keyword several times throughout text content. So provide unique content about a given subject, link back to its category page, link back to subcategory if there is any subcategory page. So there is one thing, specify keyword several times throughout text content. So you can specify it in a way like, you know, Dubai flights to Dubai, cheap flights to Dubai, book flights to Dubai, flights to Dubai from Karachi. So this is how you can break down your keywords and repeat it several times within your content. But you don't have to actually bold any of those text. So your question, if your question was like the keywords that I have put in my title and description, do I have to bold them? So no, you don't have to bold them. Even without bolding them, if you are utilizing your keywords in a right, appropriate way, you will rank anyways. So you don't have to worry about that. Keyword density. So there is a question from Mohammed Murtaza Kamal. Can you please discuss the ideal keyword density as well? So my friend, there is no ideal keyword density. Because the moment you start thinking, like, this is something that I also face with my content team, because they usually ask me like, Rafa, how many times do you think we should use this keyword? So I have a very simple answer to them. Use the keyword where you think it makes sense, because the content that you're writing is for the user, not for the search engines. Because if you will feed the right content to the user, Google will start prioritizing it for their user, because it's, again, it's a user's search engine. It's not a search engine for machines, it's for users. So there is no ideal keyword density. Just keep it simple, keep it straight, and do it for the user. That's it. Again, produce long and value-rich content. So yeah, so this is also very relevant to your question about the keyword density part as well. So according to Buffer, the ideal length for a blog post is 1600 words. That's just a starting point. So you have to be descriptive when you're writing that content on your website, you know, because let's say if someone who's competing with you for the same search query is putting a lot of information, and you're not doing that, and you're thinking that I'll just write 300 words because I'm too lazy to write 2000 words, and I'm too lazy to do that hard work, to do that research, and then you would think like, why am I not ranking? So then it doesn't make any sense. I was talking to a friend and he showed me one of his landing pages that he was ranking for at number 1. The query was how to buy Bitcoin online. I mean, it's a very competitive query, since everyone nowadays is like, I don't know if you guys are aware about the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. Like, a lot of people nowadays are very much interested in how these cryptocurrencies work. How do I buy them? What is the best currency to invest in? So people actually search for these type of things. And that guy actually put like around 3,000-4,000 words of content into his blog post, and without making one single backlink to that landing page, he was ranking for that particular topic, which is amazing. Why? Because the content itself was very useful. And this is how you need to do it. So if you are a blog owner, I mean, this is the right way to do that by yourself. Write a comprehensive like, you know, try to give all the information that a user would, you as a user, I mean, if you want to know how to buy a Bitcoin online, what are the things that you would look into? I mean, are those things into your blog post or no? If they're missing from your blog post, then if you can't satisfy yourself, you can't satisfy your user. It's that simple. And then there is like a disclaimer, the length is not everything. So maybe what can also happen is that if I would say length is everything, someone who actually, you know, is working on a topic where there is less to write about, but then you cannot, like, if there is less to write about, either you will not write about it, or if you will write about it, you will just keep repeating the same things again and again and again. And when you will do that, Google will be like, this is a lot of keyword stuffing, you know, and with keyword stuffing, you can't actually rank. So objective should not be length is everything. Objective should be, if I'm writing something for the user, I need to make it as comprehensive as possible. If my topic can be covered in 500 words, do it in 500. But if you think your topic is a lot more than 500 words, just search for that keyword, see how your competitors are, you know, writing for that particular topic, and then you can maybe, you know, plan like, how do I need to write my content? And that is what I would do if any of my landing page is not ranking. We have, I believe, one question. So what resources do you recommend for learning SEO? I mean, being very honest, I mean, one of my favorite resources is Moz.com. Reason why I even started learning SEO from Moz.com when it used to be called SEOmoz.com. So this is my, I mean, I highly recommend SEOmoz.com, Moz.com to everyone if they want to learn SEO. I mean, if they want to know the basic fundamentals of SEO. Is it a good practice of using someone else's content which is already ranked? Would it help you optimize your web page? No, never. It won't. It won't actually. So it's not a good practice because I remember, I guess, we used to have a blog. I used to have a blog long time ago. This is 2007, I believe. Yeah. And we used to have a news website where I used to just get the news from, you know, different sources, and we used to generate a lot of traffic by then. But then Google had a algorithmic change update where Google penalized all those websites that are copying content from different websites and actually hurting their traffic, because, you know, they're copying someone's work, and ideally they should be punished. Anyone should be punished if they're actually stealing someone's content and, you know, are trying to generate traffic from that content. To generate traffic, the best way to do it by yourself is to have your own content, and that is the only key which will help you rank. Own content, comprehensive, and, you know, try to put all the information that a user would look for, make it user friendly. Don't worry about the keywords when you will write something this comprehensive where you have like 2000 words. I mean, I'm 100% sure if you're writing something about Ferrari as a car, I mean, in 3000 words, you will have it multiple times, which will actually justify the keyword density that you think is a keyword density. So the keyword part, the content optimization part, from an onset perspective is done. If you have questions, keep adding them. And then we have the accessibility, crawlers, and bots. I mean, if you are someone who loves being technical, I mean, then this is for you. Accessibility, crawlers, and bots. So what is it? So Google has bots that try to enter into your website. And if there will be any accessibility related issues, Google is not going to do that. And one of the reasons Mubin Yaqub asked me this question, like some of his pages are not indexed, then he needs to actually look into, like, one is internal linking, but he also needs to look into other areas, like how the URL structures are made for those pages, what is the loading time of those pages, are there any canonicalization issues, content load related issues, any meta tags that are missing. So, you know, static URL. So what is a static URL? A static URL is something that is very simple. www.daraz.pk/mobile-phones. It is a static URL. I mean, you know, if I have to go to the mobile phones page, this is the daraz.pk/mobile-phones. Very simple. Whereas if the URL was not static, then what it could have been, then it could have been something like daraz.pk category ID is equals to 3 underscore subcategory ID is equals to 1. The user would not have remembered it, and the search engines would have problems in, in getting into that URL structure, because it's not that friendly. It has parameters that can be changed anytime and can create multiple issues for a user. Canonicalization issues, you just need to make sure that you have the canonical tag implemented. It's very simple. rel is equals to canonical, and then you can put the same URL in the canonical feed. Content loads in HTML, how your content loads in the HTML format of the landing page, because that is another important thing. I mean, page speed is like one of my favorite topics. I mean, the first thing, if I have to optimize a website, the first thing that I will look into is the page speed of the website. Like, what is the page speed on mobile devices? What is the page speed on desktop devices? And Google is now also like, there is a algorithmic update for ranking, the page speed update, and 53% of websites are, as per Google, based on their 2018 report, 53% of users actually bounce off the website if the website is taking more than 3 to 4 seconds in getting load. Okay. Okay, so there is this question. Why do we use robot text? How does it work? Can we restrict Google bot to crawl some particular web pages? Yes, we can do that from the robots text file. I mean, if you have to allow a directory on your website, you can just leave the $sign \, and it will index. But if you have to actually disallow something, you can put a disallow command on the robots file. And there are like a lot of tools that can actually help you build the robots text file. So let's say if you are a non-technical person, let's say if you are a blogger who doesn't know anything about development, who doesn't know anything about technical SEO, just go to Google, find for robots text generator. It will ask you what are the search engine bots that you would like to allow, what are the search engine bots that you would like to disallow or block from indexing your website. Then you can also restrict landing pages, like what are the landing pages should I be allowing Google to index for my website, and what are the landing pages that I should be restricting to Google that they should not be indexing. So for instance, let's say you have a community portal, you have built a forum website where you want to enable the privacy. So what you will do is you will say, I have a directory which is profile directory. I want to disallow /profile directory as an example, just giving an example. And then search crawlers will read the robots text file. They will see, okay, this person wants to block this specific profile directory. So we index all of his website, but we will not index the profile directory, so that those pages will not appear on the search engine result page. Also, when people are actually in the phase of developing their websites, what they do is, what I personally do is, I then disallow that website to search engines from my robots.txt file. Reason why the website is not ready. So I don't want to invite a guest when my home is not even, it's not ready. I hope that answers your question. There are other things like Meta Robots allowing indexing and crawling. You should check that. Proper redirections using 301. How does host does not restrict the IP? So I've seen this with a lot of websites. And so example, there is a website that is handling Pakistani audience, but the webmaster wants to block the IP or restrict the IP of people coming from the United States. Maybe he's getting a lot of irrelevant traffic, which is costing him a good amount in terms of his server cost, his bandwidth cost, or is compromising the performance. So what he does is he blocks the IP coming from United States. But what happens in return is that it also blocks your Google search crawler IPs, so that Google will be also not able to index your website. In that case, you're not just restricting it for that you're not just restricting that IP pool for United States, but you're actually blocking it for search engine bots as well. So when you're doing such things, be very careful with these items. I mean, in today's world, when things are so perfect, so optimized, I mean, server optimization, you can get it. Like there are there are managed server companies that help you optimizing your server, that manages your servers. I mean, just get them rather than experimenting all of it by yourself, because that can actually get you into some serious trouble. URLs included in sitemap.xml file. So what happens sometimes is that you have built a static website and you have built your sitemap. So you launch your website on January 1st, and you uploaded your sitemap on January 1st, but then you have been adding content from January 1st till April 1st. But then your sitemap.xml file is not updated because it is the same XML file that you uploaded on the 1st of Jan. So you need to make sure that anytime you're adding a URL into your sitemap, it's also being added into, like, anytime you're adding a URL into your landing page, it's also being added into your sitemap.xml file. So for a WordPress website, it's very easy, because with WordPress, you can just, you can get a sitemap plugin that will actually help you. And whenever you're posting something to your website, it will automatically add that into your sitemap. Whereas for other websites, I mean, there are different plugins for different themes. And if it's a HTML website, then you can keep adding it by yourself, or you can actually, you can actually run a cron job for that, where it crawls all your web pages and updates that into your sitemap file. Now, offsite optimization. So there are two questions that I will answer before I start off page optimization. So how many keywords, Adil asked me this question, how many keywords we can use in a single web page? Is there any limitation? Adil, I have said this before. So you don't have to limit yourself, with a specific number. It is similar to keyword density. So you don't have to add any keyword density. Just like you don't have to do any keyword density, you don't have to put a limitation for yourself in terms of how many keywords should I be adding to my single web page. If you think the keywords are making sense to the content, and if you think that they're not being repeated all the time, and if you think that, they are added in a way where it does make sense for a user to understand it, then it would make sense. But if you're just adding it for the sake of, I need to add it, then it will eventually hurt you in terms of your rankings, in terms of your website performance. Saad Ahmed is asking me a question. Is adding a blog section on e-commerce website a good idea for ranking? Saad, the answer is yes. It's 100% yes. Reason why with blog section, you can actually start inspiring your users. So for instance, I mean, even for a boring product, you can do that. I mean, let's say tissue box. I can see a tissue box in front of me. So let's say you have a website about tissue boxes. Imagine you have a blog about that. What can you do with it? You need to be creative then. You can talk about fragrances tissue boxes that you are selling, and what fragrances do you have in those tissues. You can talk about those flavors. You can talk about wet wipes, for instance, and how many people are using tissues when they're driving the car, and that is one of the reasons why everybody has a tissue packet inside their car. So there is a reason to everything. So you can start capitalizing on those reasons by your blog content, and you can start inspiring your customers with that. So if you are selling pet supplies online, you can add a lot of stuff that a cat would do, or that a cat would play with, or a dog would play with. So you can create stories, you can create blog posts about those topics, and then you can start pointing those particular products to your product pages, which would actually create internal links to those product pages. And because your blog pages are so comprehensive, so informative, and are passing links to your product pages, Google will start actually ranking both of your pages, your product pages for your product specific queries, your blog page for the for your inspirational related queries, or for people who are actually asking something on Google, like what are the best tools for cats to play with. I mean, and then imagine you have a list of tools that a cat plays with, like these are the top 10 tools that your cat would love, for instance. I mean, that's a blog post that you can create, and then you can point those 10 blog posts to either your landing pages, or let's say if you're running an Amazon affiliate, I mean, you can also point that out to your Amazon product pages, your affiliate pages. Yeah, I guess that answers your question. And then offsite optimization. So we know SEO, like from a structure perspective, from an on-site perspective, from a keyword perspective. Now, like, how do I need to find my keywords? Where can I actually find my keywords? And then how do I have to implement them through my meta title, my meta description? How do I need to utilize my keywords on my content? How do I need to keep it natural, keep it simple? So all of that part is done now. And then there is offsite optimization. So what is offsite optimization? So on-site is anything that you would do on your website landing page, whereas offsite is anything that you would not do on your landing page, but you will do for your landing page on someone else's website. And there is one simple definition of site optimization that I really love, and that is my personal favorite, is Google is a democracy, and the number of votes in Google are the number of backlinks that you get to your website. Because backlinks are what? Basically, backlinks are recommendation that people gave to you, right? So those recommendations can come from editorial links, a news website talking about you, that XYZ website, just like for a startup, in a case of a startup, XYZ startup just got the investment of X amount. I mean, you're featured on TechCrunch, you're getting a backlink, a mention from a website like TechCrunch or Tech in Asia. I mean, that is cool, no? So these are the editorial links that you can get. I mean, when I was at Daraz, we used to get a lot of editorial links from Tech in Asia, TechCrunch, Dawn, the local newspaper websites, which was amazing. Then the same thing for non-editorial links, blogs. So blogs that are following you. Imagine you have write something very compelling, something very, very useful, very informative. Now, what other bloggers would do is they will actually source you. They will actually quote you, and they'll put you as a source, that we got this information from XYZ page, just like I did with Moz.com, that 20x% of your traffic would come from organic as compared to your paid advertising budgets. I got this from Moz.com. So I've mentioned Moz.com in my presentation. If I would have write a blog post, I would have also put their link, right? So this is how you can get non-editorial links from a blog. Then industry links. In a case like e-commerce, let's say on an e-commerce website, Samsung has launched a new phone. But then what Samsung would do is Samsung would say, our official partners are website A, website B, website C. So you're getting an industry link. And then there is a sponsored link as well, where you can, where you can actually ask the webmaster. You can do a barter deal with them. You can do some sort of partnership with them, and you can get a link from their website as well. So that would become your sponsor link. Okay, there is a question from Maria Harim. What is the best way to write alt text? Keep it short, keep it simple. I mean, let's say there is an image of SEO. So and my topic is about SEO fundamentals. I would just keep the alt text to SEO fundamentals, because this is what my topic is about. So if someone would look for SEO fundamental either as a topic or an image, they will always able to see my image in the search result. Or let's say there is this image, SEO trends in 2020. With this as my alt text, someone search for it, they will see my image. If they are not able to see my blog post for that, they can still see my image. When they click on my image, they will be redirected to my blog post. Okay. Some factors for offsite optimization. So whenever you are doing the link building part or trying to generate links, you need to take these things into consideration. Number of linking domains, like the website that you're getting linked from, how many number of linking domain does that website have? How many linking pages does that website have? How authority, domain authority, what is the domain authority, link relevancy, links from home page, do follow versus no follow, diversity of links. So these are some factors. I'll just get into do follow versus no follow because we didn't actually discuss this part. So in links, there are two types, do follow links and no follow links. So do follow links are those links where we allow Google to crawl the link that I have mentioned in my article. So what happens when you give someone a do follow link, or what happens when you get a do follow link is that the authority gets passed from one website to another one. But if there is a no follow link, it is also good to your link equation or to your website's link profile, but no follow will not pass that much authority to your web page or to your website. But then again, it's always important to have both. Reason why, because let's say if you have 100% no follow links, your website will not build its link profile or won't be able to build a good link profile. Whereas if you have 100% you do follow links, because you think now that, okay, no follow links are useless, so I just need to spend my time on getting do follow links. And if you do that, then what happens is Google crawlers will actually analyze your link profile and they'll see like, okay, there is something fishy. Reason why this guy is getting 100% do follow links, and how in the world is that possible? So they will actually, they will see the pattern of how you're getting links, and maybe you are actually doing something fishy. Maybe you have just put your website in a forums footer where you are getting 1 million, 2 million pages backlinks to your website, and all of them are do follow. So that can actually penalize your website. Diversity of links. So when you're building links, don't focus on one keyword. You can focus on multiple variations. Like for me, flights to Dubai is the keyword. So I will say flights to Dubai, cheap flights to Dubai, book flights to Dubai. I mean, there is the diversification of how do I want to build my backlinks. It's not just one keyword that I'm focusing on, but I'm focusing on multiple keywords. Contextual links, links coming through content or in form of content that are long tail. So one of the reasons blog is important is because it is a platform that can actually allow you to generate contextual links. And then link anchor, the anchor text that you're putting as your link. Like, what is that clickable text? When I click on that text that takes me to your web page, what is that text? So that has to be also like, very, it has to be a good one. It has to be the right anchor text, right keyword that you would like to target. Because if you will just put something random, I mean, then it would not make sense. There used to be a funny use case of the link anchor where Adobe used to rank for a click here. Reason why, on different websites worldwide, whether you are on a bank website or on a university website or on some website that asks you to download a PDF, they used to hyperlink click here as a anchor text for Adobe. So whenever a user would search for click here, they used to find Adobe. I think that is fixed now, but I believe that is still going to be somewhere on the search result page. Best tool to find industry leader SEO strategy. I mean, there is no tool. There is actually one tool, which is Google, definitely, because you can find, I mean, you can just go to moz.com. You can go to backlinko.com. Backlinko is another amazing website that I personally like, in terms of how they have, wrote everything in so much detail of how to do SEO. So moz.com and backlinko.com is moz.com and backlinko.com. I mean, these are the websites where you can actually get the best strategy on how to do SEO for your website. So yeah, do you guys have any questions about off-page optimization or how to build backlinks? I've also wrote down those websites on the chat, so you guys can actually go to these websites and start doing your research about the SEO as a topic. So do we have any questions on off page, or should I just go to the next slide? Guess we have one. Cool. So this is the bonus round. So SEO trends for 2020. So we have actually covered all the basics of what you need to do when you are doing the SEO of your website. So these are some trends to follow actually that will actually tell you that, okay, in which direction do I need to go now? So if I want to do the SEO for my website, what are the points? What are the key points that I need to look into? So what I've done is I've put them into this slide. BERT, it's a natural language processing format, a language that Google has adopted now, which actually focuses on user-focused optimization content, as in, how do you write your content and what purpose that content serves. So trend number one is to focus on what your user would think in a way that, okay, if I'm working on a topic, what answers can that topic bring to my user? When you will start thinking in that way, you will actually get a lot of content ideas. And there's one thing that I also do to prioritize my objectives that I want to do. I build an opportunity tree solution. With that opportunity tree solution, you can actually write down your opportunity, like, okay, what is it that I try to solve for my user? Write it down. This is what I want to achieve. When a user would come to this topic, or this is the purpose of this topic, write it as an opportunity, and then add questions to that opportunity. Okay, if this is the topic, what are the things that a user would actually look into to gather information about the topic? So question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. So it will be something like your topic opportunity solution, where you add the topic as an opportunity and then all the questions that a person would seek when he's looking for that topic. Trend number 2 is high quality optimized content. We already know that, especially for blogs or for any informative website, I mean high quality and optimized content. How do you optimize the content? By making sure that you are answering everything that a user would ask for when he's landing on your website. Trend number 3 is the user experience, that when a person lands on your website, what user experience is he getting? I mean, if let's say 80% of your traffic is coming from mobile device, but you have been, you know, designing your website from a desktop perspective, then you're definitely not ranking. So you need to think in that way, like, okay, what are the devices that my users are browsing, and you know, how do they use them, and how can I make it more easier for them. Then trend number 4 is mobile SEO. You guys, if you have implemented Google Analytics on your website, you can actually check this in audiences, like how many of your audience is coming from mobile device versus your desktop device, and then you can actually plan your SEO strategy. Structured data, we covered this one. The rich snippets, link building and brand building. So when I say link building and brand building, it's off-page optimization, that how many mentions you are getting, because based on those mentions, Google will be like, okay, this brand is actually getting a mention when someone talks about pet supplies. So every time someone talks about pet supplies in Pakistan, they get a mention. And then it makes it more relevant for Google to rank your website, because now there is brand building, people are talking about you, people are linking to you. And then focus on visibility. By visibility, I mean focus on your overall traffic. How do you get there? And SEO is just one way of, you know, achieving that visibility. You can also look into other different mediums of generating traffic. LinkedIn can be one of those mediums. Facebook can be one of those mediums. There are a lot of social media platforms that you can actually use. For instance, I personally use Reddit to find useful content related to my favorite topics. So find a topic on these social media platforms, and maybe, you know, there are a lot of community forums as well. So that will help you gathering that visibility for your website. And that's it, guys. I hope you all have actually enjoyed this session, and I do hope that I was able to actually answer you all of your questions. And if there are still any questions, I mean, please feel free to either you drop them here, or you guys can actually message me on Facebook, add me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, and I am more than happy to answer your questions.